Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Viewers Advisory for Hamilton, the Musical. My name is Carrie Gray, and I am the Adult and Senior Services Specialist for Prince George's County Memorial Library System. And I'm also a member of our Black History and Culture work team. We thought it would be great to have a discussion on Hamilton leading up to the Independence holiday and provide a Black perspective, as Hamilton is unique, and the fact that there aren't any Black characters. However, through non-traditional casting allowed for a diverse cast. Lin-Manuel Miranda is quoted as saying, "This is the story about America then, told by America now." Hamilton follows the founding of the United States through the War of Independence and foundational historical events up to 1804 through the perspective of Alexander Hamilton. Sit back, relax, and join the conversation by commenting. Thank you. All right, if you guys don't mind going around and introducing yourselves to everyone.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Junwa. I am a librarian 3 at the Glenarden branch, and I'm very excited to talk about Hamilton.
Hi, I am Kiana Turpin-McCurtis. I'm a library associate 2 at the Spaldings branch.
Hi, I'm Kenesha Matthews. I am a library associate 2 at Hillcrest Heights, and Hamilton is amazing. I blast it in my car. My child knows it, so let's go.
All right, with that energy.
And I am Daniel
Hampton. My bad.
I'm a library associate 2 at Spaldings with all your information needs. And yeah, it's great to be here.
Sorry about that, Daniel. Sorry about that, Daniel. As you can see, we're really excited to get into the discussion. And without further ado, I'll let whoever wants to start go ahead and answer this question. What struck you most about Hamilton?
I can go. I feel like there is something interesting seeing Black people in that Regency era, Revolutionary era attire, especially because the history of this country, I think a lot of the images of Black people that you have from that era are people who were enslaved. Very few of the free people who were around during that time, and very few of those people were dressed in the way that the characters in Hamilton would have been dressed. I think it's very similar to Bridgerton, another show we've talked about in that way. And so there's just no denying it's something seeing people dressed that way that it just kind of is like a shock to the system, because it's not how you picture things. So that was definitely, the costuming was definitely the first thing, and seeing Black people in those costumes.
I think for me, it was the storytelling through hip hop. I am a rapper, I am a musician, and I actually just won a program based on a program I did called Hip Hop Storytellers. I believe everybody can rap. I believe everybody can rhyme. I think it's what you're trying to get to the audience that really makes you a storyteller. So the way that Lin-Manuel Miranda did that, he did that. And I told my friend after watching it, I'm going to work with him one day. Like before I leave this earth, I'm going to do a musical with him. Real talk, real facts.
So my perspective on it, what stuck out the most was the vocal ability of the people on this show. Loved it from beginning to end. I think that's the thing that stuck out to me most. And then singing the entire show. Like, I think I was thinking to myself, what kind of lung capacity do you have to do this for nearly 3 hours? So that probably stuck out to me the most. And then a side note, it just also makes me think about like what I did in high school, all the shows and things I was in, all of the hours of preparation, rehearsing and all of that. So on this level, I'm pretty sure very hard work done and a very good delivery.
Yeah, not to sound like the broken tape recorder, but everything Elizabeth, Kay, and Kiana just said, from the production quality to seeing people of color represented in, I don't know if non-traditional is the word, but in non-traditional ways, the storytelling through hip hop, it was breathtaking. It was breathtaking. It kind of put me in the mind frame watching this again for the second time. I'm like, okay, I know a lot of you have seen Bridgerton, where it's like a story told from a particular era, but it uses people of color and it has a very diverse cast. It's just breathtakingly done, just breathtaking.
I would also like to add to that. I have a background in the arts as well. I've done a lot of theater through college. I'm also a member of Alpha Psi Omega National Theater Honor Society. And when we think of theater and we think of classical theater, we think of we've experienced everything from that Renaissance era onto classical show tunes, what people have been accustomed to, and to see hip hop masterfully done, and the writing and the ability to tell the story through rhyme, I just think was phenomenal from a writing aspect. I think Lin-Manuel Miranda, because I think I dropped off his name in the beginning when I talked about it, and I think he deserved all the flowers and all the things because he expertly mastered one. I feel like the music can stand alone as an album, and its #1 sales have shown that. And also he's mastered the rhyming of where it makes sense and give you factual information, and the juxtaposition of the style of hip hop, the urbanness, and putting it to that Renaissance era, which Elizabeth spoke to earlier. It did make me do a little research, and I was thinking as someone, where, I wish I don't have the money and the means to necessarily see every Broadway show, but I think about what are the other Broadway shows? Is this the first time hip hop has kind of been done in Broadway? And it hasn't. So you have just kind of looking on the internet, he has In the Heights, which is actually a movie coming up. You had Bring It On, Holla If You Hear Me. So I think the revolutionary aspect of this production, we will now start to see, just like in rap, you will see styles copycatted. You will see this copycatted throughout musicals now. Did anybody have anything else to say on that? Are y'all ready for the next question?
Ready for the next question.
Bring it on.
So let's see who's ready. What was your favorite scene in the musical?
So I'll go first. So first of all, how do you pinpoint one scene out of something that is so marvelous? It's hard, but I'm going to be honest. The scene that I find myself reacting over and over again is when Philip and Eliza are together and he's basically on the table and she's asking Hamilton, what happened to my son? How could you let this happen? And then they start playing the piano, if you will, and he starts counting in the French aspect. And I mean, it is fire. I love the way that he takes songs from previous scenes and then he adds them back into a new beat. So just that scene right there, Eliza has already been through so much. Her husband just cheated on her, but then she lost her son at the same time. I mean, wow, it was powerful. It was enough to speak to me. So yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes.
And I want to interject. I forgot to say this at the beginning. This might be a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen Hamilton already, you might want to check it out before you go any further. We don't want to spoil it for you, but I think even with our tidbits, it's worthy of the watch anyway. But
so it is history too. So
yeah. Anybody else?
Well, since I made that joke, I guess I can go next. I really was struggling with this answer, so I'm going to give 2 answers. Sorry, guys. But I really love the song Satisfied and just how that's done, because it's basically them doing a scene that they've already done backwards. It's fantastic. And had listened to the soundtrack a lot of times before I ever saw the show. And I did see it live, and seeing it live and just seeing actual people do this like in real life is just phenomenal. But even watching it on the Disney Plus, like you get to see more. You can see more when you watch it like on Disney Plus, and it's just fantastic. So that's one of my favorites, along with Nonstop, like similar type of thing. Like the set is actually moving, and people are moving while the set is moving, and the craftsmanship, the architecture, the idea to make it feel like the song, like the scene looks like the song. It's phenomenal work. So 2 songs I really like, and then scenes just when you're watching it, it's just, you feel the energy of the songs through those scenes. Mm-hmm. And I think Satisfied might slightly be a little bit of a favorite because of what the song is saying too. It's like, like a love that you can't have, like something like unforbidden. And so it's just, love it.
I guess I'll go next because Liz stole my answer. like watching, like you see movies and TV shows all the time do that rapid rewind sequence to re-show the scene from a different perspective. To actually see it done in live action was crazy. And her vocals in Satisfied was amazing.
Yes.
She did a phenomenal job. I have a follow-up question to the whole Satisfied scene, but I'll let everybody else answer because I felt like the song and the scene itself was just really deep, so we can dive into that later. But that was my favorite scene as well.
Okay, y'all. So I want to kind of give my opinion. I just think I kind of have 2. And that's me picking 2 because this as a whole is a favorite. One, I just thought that was done that tied hip hop to politics was the cabinet battle. Mm-hmm. The cabinet battles and that whole cipher mentality of arguing on the floor. And I even thought about bringing in it today's terms when I see them on C-SPAN and you're watching with them introduce bills and arguing it down. Mm-hmm. And, there's a famous wrestler who turned politician, Jesse Ventura, who has a book called The Democrats and the Republicans. And people's criticism of hip hop always wants to turn to violence. So the fact that you have this battle of wits and a battle of words, and you constantly hear talking about how Alexander Hamilton was dangerous with a pen. Like he was writing off stuff, like giving them stuff to read and thinking about with that pen, he was vicious. The same thing you have in hip hop culture, being vicious with the pen. You the best. You automatically go in a battle with you the best. Nobody goes into the battle with being the worst. So like, that's what you think of your opponent. So I just think that really brilliantly juxtaposed often 2 separate things and merging them into one. Next is the shot, the end, when the beat stops, when there is no music, when you don't know if it's hip hop, spoken word, dialogue, and it makes you think about your life. Who's going to tell your story? What's going on? I just thought that was so powerful and so well done. Anybody else? That's my mic drop.
I'm going to quickly interject, but it's like I also want to speak to like this is like the greatest display of a play on words that I have ever experienced. Like you were saying, pen, like it goes back to that euphemism. The pen is mightier than the sword, and so that's why the pen was so reinforced in such a violent, extra manner. It was phenomenal. But yeah, go ahead. Who's next?
Okay, so last but certainly not least. So I'm watching this film. I'm like, what is my favorite scene in the movie? And the reason I chose this, I'll tell you all in a minute. My favorite scene right now was when Hamilton got the letter that John Lawrence had passed. That was his best friend. And I think that stuck out to me more recently because I just recently lost my best friend. So that really stuck out to me. So at this moment, that scene stuck out to me and it touched my heart. So I picked that one.
Yeah. I definitely think there are ways to relate this to personal experience. And, you know, like Elizabeth said, like, we can't really give you a spoilers because it's this history, but it humanizes, you know, a founding fathers, and it humanizes the experience of what they go through as you watch through, like, what is it? Divorce, not divorce, but you know, cheating, like life, people dying.
Yeah.
And I really like shows their passion of they were not afraid to die. Like they joked about it, like I'll die for this. And what the start of, like, I feel like this country was. And I think I'm probably going to go out of order for my list of questions that we had, but it does speak to how, I guess, how did you find yourself seeing how this related to now? Like, how, as we think about like the issues and the stuff that it covers, from political unrest, women's rights, orphan care, immigration, how, what touched you, or what touched you on that from it being a real musical and showing that emotion? I know that might be a little difficult question, and maybe I'll kind of answer it to begin with. But when I think about racial relations in America, and you hear them fighting for this country, like America was the new hope. It was like how to, like, they got here and they was like, well, we can get under the king's thumb. We tired of taxes, throw that joint in there, you know, and everything else like that. Like, it was their start. But it's sometimes the people that you don't see, the natives of this land, the people that worked in the South and that worked in the field. So for me, in a time where we're adamantly talking about systemic racism, this is the beginning of it. This is where you see it written into Constitution, who it was written for and who wasn't included, from voting to everything else and how they laid out the system. This is where it starts. So anybody else have any opinions on what social issues they found themselves relating to today?
I can go. Earlier you opened, well, at the beginning, you opened up with the background of the story and a quote from Lin-Manuel Miranda saying that this is America then told by America now. And that quote really resonates with me, because it's like the America that we live in now as we know it, seems like it refuses to acknowledge the presence of, the contributions of, and even the existence of immigrant and slavery's impact, and how it's deeply woven into, and even I'll even go so far as to say it has constructed the America that we have now. And I feel like using people of color to depict the events kind of reintroduces people of color back into that conversation and back into that narrative, as if I could quote Liza.
It's interesting, I think, because I've been on the Hamilton train now for a few years. And I think my perception of the musical has changed with what has gone on in society. Because the first time I engaged with Hamilton was Barack Obama was still in office. And so it's like everything that was happening during that time really meshed well with like the first part of Hamilton, that like scrappiness, that like wanting, you know, the kind of, I don't want to say progressive, but like kind of like this like excitement of what could be. And then there was the election of 2016. And that whole thing, I remember telling someone, like, I kind of felt like, you know, this is my opinion, that Hillary Clinton was actually like a good example of Hamilton, because their stories are kind of similar. They're kind of like these people who have kind of had to like prove to people that they made their way up, and then they kind of get to this chance to possibly being president and it doesn't happen for them. And so like for me, like Hamilton and the significance just always changes with what is happening in society. And definitely when we saw what the Trump years look like, and even now what the Biden years are looking like, it just kind of evolves with the country. And to me, it just shows like how things change and stay the same at the same time. So that's like my perspective on it.
Thank you for that. I think that gave great clarity into, I guess, what the audience was feeling when it first, hit Broadway. And looking at some of the background on, if you go to Disney Plus, they have an in-depth Hamilton, and they kind of talked about like the people who came. At one of the shows, I believe Barack Obama came, and he also spoke before the show. And I think it was just so cultural. And I think you're right. Like he talked about change. He talked about hope. And I think he really invigorated into the heart of America, like, that you can be this and have this, like you can come here for change. You know what I'm saying? Because if you look at it, and think of it, our founders were immigrants to this country. We call, natives, and, a history of, when we talk about the discovering of Americas, and slur them by calling Indians and not recognizing them as native people on this land and indigenous people. And, we think about like how much land they can claim now for reservations. And even in Prince George's County, the land that we are on was, so many, the names of it is, you can tell it's tribal names. So it pays to, like, when they talk about young, scrappy, this, that, and the third, but you have to pay respects to what this was and what was lost to other people. So I just think that put it in a great mind frame of those who actually saw it. Because I definitely probably would take a different mindset if I probably seen it in person versus that. Any other thing before we can go back to that on relating to today, or we can kind of close that out?
I was just going to kind of say, so I was watching this interview with the Hamilton cast, and someone had basically tweeted and asked Lin, if he, judging by what he knows now, kind of like what Lizzie was talking about, like Trump is president, the deaths of like George Floyd and anyone else that we've lost, would he have integrated those things into the script or changed some of the lines? And basically, Lin said, it's been since 2015. And as we can see, the things that I've covered in the play are still happening today. So there's no need to change it because pretty much all those things have been tackled. And I think it's safe to say that when Lin wrote this, I think he just wanted to make sure that we knew history and the way that it should be told, at least from his perspective. But I think it also goes into tell you that just certain things he say, like immigrants, we get the job done. Like it's highlights that he made about various things. And it's like, okay, when you think of immigrants, like people who come, they migrate, they come over to the country or whatever, for whatever reason, they work hard. They're ethic, like their work ethic and things of that nature. So when he says that, it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure any immigrant will resonate with that. Or just the fact that Hamilton shows you like he got it out the mud. Like, it don't matter what color you are. He tells you he started from the bottom. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us feel like in our lives, we start from the bottom somewhere because you're not going to have all the answers. But like y'all said, he had hope. He had pride. He had resilience. He was a relentless man. And even though he didn't win as president, he won a lot more. So I think the thing about Hamilton is further more than just history and social things that you can resonate with. I think just as a human, you can resonate with those traits, just getting it out the mud for yourself and just being a person who's willing. And last but not least, so John Lawrence, he says like, I won't stop until you guys are out of bondage and have the same rights as you and me or whatever. And it's basically like Daniel said, slavery still exists today. And so it's like, will the bondage ever end? I mean, because even though we might not have shackles on our hands, we still have them in our mind, unfortunately, you know, some of us, a lot of us. And I think we're just trying to break those chains. So I think when you start telling your story, AKA the hip hop story that you want to tell, you can begin to kind of break those chains and be you and get it out the mud. So I think that's kind of what Hamilton leaves me with.
Thanks. I think that definitely was insightful because, you know, they kind of look down on Hamilton too, I think, in a way, like, you know, he wasn't, like, I think if you dive into his history, he wasn't like from the mainland, and, you know, he had a Scottish father. Don't quote me on that, but I know he had, in a way, mixed heritage. And my apologies to my UK folks, but there is this, I guess I could say this as American, as a Black American, I can say that there is a certain elitist when you have the king, the queen, and feeling on the mainland that comes with that. And I definitely think, you know, that classism you can see, especially from these people. And then it gave an opportunity to kind of help, you know, I don't know how to say this without probably being controversial, but I think whereas white people, and you look at classism in between the white race, between different places, Scottish, Irish, different things like that, kind of highlights that between the English, if you will, you know? So I think that definitely, you kind of see that theme in there. So talking about race, this play story does not include any Black characters. However, my opinion, and I will infuse this in the question, is the hip hop, which is, you know, came out of the Black experience in America, is a character of this. I look at it as a character. Like, you can't, with the sampling of songs from Biggie's 10 Crack Commandments to, you know, the 10 Dual Commandments, we in there. And this new idea of colorblind casting, which they do, the Actors Equity Associate kind of want to stray people away from. They want to lean to non-traditional casting. So non-traditional casting of where you have people of a different race playing, you know, these characters. How do you feel that played in telling the story? And I'll start with a lighthearted thing on it, and then y'all can jump in. I will say this: they had to cleverly introduce people so you knew who they were, and they masterfully did it without it being so obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it. And I would go back to what Daniel was saying before, with history having just really erased Black people from that era. And so it does with this casting, and I know there's also the term conscious casting. It was clear that this was consciously thought of, like, how does this reframe history by casting this person in this role? And I can speak as someone who saw it live, and the person who was casted on Hamilton was actually a Black man had casted. And even like when someone of a different race steps into that role, it does give a whole different level to the character, because you're kind of bringing everything with that. So like from seeing Lin-Manuel in that role, you're seeing from his immigrant perspective, from his Latinx perspective, and he's bringing all of that into that character and making that a part of the American fabric. And for me, when I saw the Hamilton and a Black man was playing that role, like there's no way you can't take the history of being Black in America and put that into the American story. And there's no way that would have been done. I'm seeing Karen. There's no way that would have been done if you didn't cast the way you did. And I say that because I completely understand the criticisms that people have of this play. Like, and I think even Lin-Manuel has come back and said, you know, I wish there would have been time to add this in and add that in, because this is a 3-hour play, y'all. Like, it's a long play. But I do think that even just with the casting and the consciousness of it. It's extremely impactful. There's just no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Like, you have people of all races all over the country looking up American history and then thinking of Black people, Latinx people, people of all different races in those spaces. And before it was just all white, old white men. So there has to be something to that.
Yeah, I just want to interject. I heard him say that when he was thinking of casting and he was thinking of scoring, he didn't see like color or race. He heard voices. So like, even like, I think he was like, he said like, you know, he thought, oh, Eminem, oh, Jay-Z, you know, like thinking the type, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, especially for like as a creative, you know, sometimes your process is different and people don't get your vision. You only hope that people understand it. So I think it was going to be wild anyway. And it didn't start on Broadway. I believe it started off Broadway and was moved to Broadway. So that kind of shows you, it kind of shows you like, you know, it wasn't one of those things that was automatically boom on Broadway. They took chances. And this was something that paid off big.
Yeah, because it was originally at off-Broadway location called the Public, and I tried to go see it then. But when it was at the Public, I couldn't get in. I couldn't get in, but I tried. But when it was at the Public, they were workshopping it the whole time. So this version of Hamilton that is everyone has seen, there were different scenes in there. They did consider adding in more elements about slavery. There were lines in there that they had to take out. There were so many things that had to be moved and shifted and considered. So I do wish people would consider, like, you know, there is an editing process in that, yeah, some things weren't put in there, but sometimes there's a reason. Because I think, I can't remember, there's a character that they considered putting in and then it just was too long and they took it out. So yeah.
I got, you know, as a person who wasn't too familiar with like the details of the Alexander Hamilton story, like, of course I know the history, but like to dive into the depths of it. My first time watching Hamilton, I was a little confused in the beginning because I was like, these are Black people and I don't know who anybody is or who anybody's supposed to be. But, you know, it takes some time to break down the traditional school of thought that I had when it comes to envisioning history. And I had to kind of remove that historical lens in a way and just dive into the story that they were telling and learn the characters that way. And in doing that, I was able to go ahead and also process some different attitudes about history and some different things about history. Like, okay, what if everybody of all different backgrounds, all different races, creeds, and whatever have you, it's like, what if they all just came over together and still did the same thing the way it was done in Hamilton? Like, if let's say the Hamilton story as we know it through Disney Plus, as we know it through Broadway, was the reality. Like, how beautiful would that have been? So it just got my mind thinking. And so I had to remove the historic lens of what has been taught to us systemically and explicitly through school and everything, and just kind of dive into the story for what it was with the characters that were presented. And I was able to get to know the characters as people, as opposed to getting to know the characters in their color or their position. It was confusing at first, but you know, once I had to apply a different lens to it in order to watch it and actually get the most out of it.
That's good. I think that's interesting perspective. I'm kind of glad we all got, you know, took something different from it. One, I have a statement. I just think if the founding fathers knew, or the people knew, like in retrospect, you won't have a Black or Puerto Rican, I think they will fall out on the floor, honey. Child, I think they will fall out on the floor if they would only knew that today, you know what I'm saying, this is what we would be doing. However, I think with this new non-traditional casting, does this open ourselves up to be fair for other things? Like, would not we be appalled as Black people if an all-white cast decided to do Roots the musical? You know what I'm saying? So how do you feel on the sensitivity? I know y'all laughing, but we know we've seen it. And I have to add my personal, I went to a historically Black college. I went to Elizabeth City State University, whoop, whoop, go Vikings, North Carolina, Elizabeth City. But we had a theater professor who chose to do a play about the Holocaust called with an all Black, most of us was Black. It was a couple of white people in our school, but Black. So I played, no lie, we did. I Never Saw Another Butterfly. And I played a person in a concentration camp. Me, my whole Black self. Now, how do you feel like, how would you feel if you was to see it? Are we going to give the same creative liberty to them? You know, that creative freedom?
I understand what you're saying, but when you have, geez, I'm not the most eloquent speaker, but I don't feel any kind of way having African-American individuals playing the white roles. But if the roles were reversed, I would feel offended. But I would also think to myself, like, did they do a really good job doing that? And then I would kind of like judge, I guess, everything going on. Like, have you all ever like heard of like movies where they would say like, oh, Tom Cruise is gonna play Martin Luther King or something, you know? And you kind of think like what? Like that don't even sound right. Like, I just feel like there's more of a pass for us, but I guess not for them. And I hate to just say them, but I don't know. For myself, yes, I would feel some kind of way. I would feel offended.
I'm poking the bear.
Because
I know.
I feel like that question is an interesting one because it assumes that things are fair and they're not. Like,
right.
as if we're living in a society where everybody is on screen, everybody is on Broadway, no, that's not the reality we live in. So
it's not.
Or like for a white person to be on Broadway, that's not anything new. It's
no,
not.
Right, exactly.
It's not, but for a Black person to have a speaking role in a period piece, that's rare. It's rare, guys. And you don't see it on Broadway because I'm a Broadway fan. Like I went to see Broadway shows like for birthdays and stuff. Like I can tell you it's not common. And it's usually having to shift something or adjust something to make space for. So yeah. I think that question can be kind of irritating because it makes it seem as if like, oh, like there's just opportunities for everybody. Like everybody gets a chance. No, they don't. So yeah, people are going to kind of feel away if you choose, and then it's never like they're choosing like kind of generic characters to replace. Like people always decide to go with the heavy hitters, like, oh, we're going to make Martin Luther King Jr. like this iconic character who has barely been on screen, barely even had their own representation. But we're going to have a white person play that? That doesn't make sense. Like, how many times have we seen George Washington represented? How many times have we seen Thomas Jefferson represented? These are not new characters.
Make them Black.
Yeah. Yeah, why not? Why not? Because we've seen them so many times. Yeah. But then you turn around and you say like, oh yeah, well, how would you feel if we made this character like, because they've done it before. I know there was a school that had a lot of controversy because they casted a white character as Martin Luther King. And, you know, people are going to take their creative liberties, but you can't turn around and say like, oh, is that fair? Like, no, it's already not fair. Like that's just not, to me, that's just not a fair equivalency. Like we can't just sit here and
about my experience. I told y'all about my experience as an actress and young actress in college. I went to the HBCU for HBCU period, and ooh, child, I would have never thought I'd been playing a person in a concentration camp. You just couldn't tell me that would be the case. I will say as a creative and when you workshop stuff and you do stuff like that, I embrace creative liberty. Like, I barely get offended by art. It's a lot of times it's something that's not for you. But I'm sure that there are people that looked at this and was like, oh no, child, I can't do it. This just is not what my history was. It's all of this hip hop, and this is not theater. Like, I know that elitist mentality lives.
It was facetious to me because I kind of feel like, again, I said it earlier, we are the hip hop culture. It's like we birthed it in essence. And how dare you not put us on stage? We earned it, and we should not have to earn it. We own it. So we can cast whoever we please, because it is, even though it's not our story, because it's Alexander Hamilton, who is a white man's story, they're telling it through the lens of something we have given to the universe, which is hip hop. Almost a little bit. There were some times where I did think for a second, hey guys, what if Aaron Burr was a black man? Like, what if in reality, like, what if Leslie Odom really was Aaron Burr and Aaron Burr was a black man? What if George Washington, the man who played George, what if he was a black man? Like, how would that have changed the narrative? I think it just allowed me to open my eyes up and just paint more pictures in my mind. But to see a white person playing Roots, I mean,
I'm sorry for the laugh.
It's the trigger. You feel a little triggered. Let's be honest with our feelings. We would feel triggered. You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes, unfortunately, when you have to say things as not being the dominant society, you know what I'm saying? The fact that phrases like that exist, dominating society. And I'll say this, and I've had a discussion, and this is a good place to see it. I've looked at film, and sometimes I'm turned off if I don't see a Black person ever in the film. And I think that sometimes and we said this in other viewer advisory, when we're talking about representation, and I think everyone is talking about, everybody wants to be represented. Like, won't no Black person walking by? You know what I'm saying? Not even a line. Like, I think about stuff like that when it's so systemic that we can watch the same thing and you don't understand that, because I said that to other people and they was like, you're right. It wasn't any Black people in it. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's natural for us to want to, we see people, we're like, oh, they're like me, this, and this. We gravitate towards that. But I think that does open up the concept. I definitely believe y'all all brought up good points. Daniel with making you really see the story, and Elizabeth with, hey, this is a great way to diversify Broadway. Y'all all brought up great points.
So I do have a question before you jump, Carrie, to the next one. So, and then there's like this other side in my mind and I've always kind of wondered this, is like, okay, so if you put a white member in the Roots cast, and if we switched roles for a second, like, let's say that we created our own narrative where they're the slaves and we're the masters, and you're beating them, and it now, is it like, do you want to still be in the feud? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, has this changed your narrative? Do you want to still partake in this? Because if you do, it's about to get serious. But if you don't want to be in that, because that's reality for us, being in chain, being enslaved. Like, I think for us, it's just not a joke. Like, and I'm not saying that Hamilton is a joke or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like you said, it's beyond a trigger. I think it's just, if we're going to do this, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? But it's going to get real if we did it. So I think that just really goes into a whole different narrative that I don't think nobody is ever really willing to touch, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I think you also kind of have to beg the question too. Sorry to cut you off, but I think it also begs the question: would there be any white actors who would be willing to take on those slavery roles? Like, can you act in that role? Can you get into that character, pull it off phenomenally, and make it so believable that it has the emotional impact on the audience? Like, would they be willing to fully commit to the role that is the slave number one, slave number two? Can you commit to that role? would you be willing to?
It's an interesting question. I know, I think, not to add too much complexity to it, but I remember listening to a news story about kind of the same topic, but in different cultures where they just don't have Black people. And so they were, I can't remember what country it was, but there was going to be all Asian cast of A Raisin in the Sun. And they were talking about the things that they were doing to basically convey this story to a homogenous society that, you know, like how do you convey this story in a way that is not offensive, but also can have people understand what's happening? Because they were talking about their difficulties with, like, should blackface be used? Should it not be used? Like, how can you convey this difference of skin color when that's not really a concept that most of the people in that society really deal with? That was the arguments that they were making. And so I don't want to, like, completely sit here and say, like, no, we shouldn't, like, gender bend or race bend or anything like that. But I'm just saying, like, we can't go into this conversation saying that all things are equal and that there's not, like, a context. And I feel like sometimes that's how people try to portray it. Like, well, how would you feel? And it's like, well, I mean, like, you see yourself all the time. Like, come on. Like, so I think that's why I just hate, like, I don't like the feeling of, like, that just being dismissed, or, like, people's feelings being dismissed as, like, oh, like, well, that's not you feel that way because you're just being, like, offended and sensitive. Like, no, there's, like, these are legitimate, like, concerns and complex feelings, and I think they should be made to feel as such. Like, people are going to do what they're going to do. Like, they still did that play with Martin Luther King as the white man. They did it. It happened. But people's concerns were legitimate. But then also that person's creative perspective was, I think, can be said to be legitimate as well. So it's what you're willing to take. Like, if you're willing to take that criticism, if you're willing to put that out there, and you feel nothing on your conscience, then, you know, do it. But just know that there might be consequences to that.
I think, and that's why Hamilton is so great, because I think there is a way to tell a story that's not color or race focused. You can tell A Raisin in the Sun story and not have race or the color be the focus. You can tell history and not have race or color be the focus, just by focusing on the individuals, what the individuals went through, how they succeeded, how they failed, who they were as people, what challenges they faced and overcame. Like, you can tell these stories and not be focused so much on race and the color. And Raisin in the Sun, I think it's funny because A Raisin in the Sun, yes, it speaks to a real life experience, but it was a fictional story at the end of the day that you could have just told from a different perspective, and to have that perspective not be from the perspective of, oh, this is a Black family. Like, that's not all those people were. They were mothers, they were grandmothers, they were fathers and sons and sisters and brothers. Like, you can tell a story from a familial aspect as opposed
to shared experience.
Racial. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the argument when, because I would say I sometimes feel like mixed feelings about all Black casts of, like, shows that were originally white, like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, like all those, like, kind of, like, shows that they kind of bring back. But I think that is what that speaks to. Like, there is a universal story, as they say, and Hamilton is definitely an example of that.
And to be honest, I would love to see all 8 Asian cast of Raisin in the Sun. Now, with respect to Lorraine Hansberry, I would want to see it with dealing with growing up in Asia. I don't want to see you dubbing what we've done here, but I want to see how it relates to your journey. It's just like when, I'll give you an example through film, at Death of a Funeral that Chris Rock was in, big production. That was, like, I think a British movie, if I'm not mistaken, but it was redone and they, you know, added little things to make it more Americanized, if you will. So I think it's a way that you do it with tact, where it can be learning, you know, and I think there is a need out of necessity. If you're teaching drama and you're at a predominantly white school, you're not going to have a Black Martin Luther King, or you might not have a Black Martin Luther King. And I also wanted to speak to this, but how powerful is it? Because creative process actors usually receive from, but how humanizing is it to take maybe somebody from the dominating race and make them get into character as a slave? You know, like a lot of directors do things where they call it, there's different styles of acting, method acting. For Spike Lee's School Days, he separated the light skin from the dark skin in real life, so they would have this animosity to get this feeling when they were on set. And sometimes, you know, if you're a very literal person, sometimes it's hard for you to get connected to that, like, creativity and getting in that mindset of putting yourself in those positions. So I think even visually, and I wanted to give a book recommendation because I was extreme. I poked the bear. I said an all white Roots cast, and the things went awry in the viewers advisory. But there is a book, 40 Acres, and I recommend it, by Dwayne Alexander Smith. If you have not read it, we have it at our library system. And it puts in a position of, I'll just say this with teasing it, of what if the tables were classes. And I'll say that, and I hope you all, and I'll say that once again, 40 Acres, Dwayne Alexander Smith. It is available at Prince George's County Memorial Library System. So definitely check that out. We can put that as part of our reading list. And maybe come back and do it.
I kind of have two answers to this question again. I mean, I think Eliza, not Eliza, was it Eliza? No, not Eliza. The oldest Skylar sister, I don't know why I'm
Angelica,
yeah. Thank you. Like, she's definitely a character that, you know, you
Angelica,
just absolutely love, right? I think that's the character that I love the most, of course. Like, but there's two characters that I relate to the most, and I feel like I actually relate to Aaron Burr and Eliza the most, because I felt like their struggles were just very relatable. Like, they're just trying to make it, and they're not Hamilton. They're not that personality that's bombastic, that always seems to like find a way to like just always get their thing, you know? Whereas Aaron Burr and Eliza, both of those characters are kind of the people who are, they're dismissed in a way. Like, they're dismissed. They're kind of like, and so I find that very relatable, I think. Like, it does not come easy to them. For Eliza, she's in the shadow of Angelica. And for Aaron Burr, he's in the shadow of not only Hamilton, who he feels is a lower class than him, but he's kind of in the shadow of he's like in his own way sometimes. So just very relatable. Yeah.
So I have two characters, not relatable, but just two characters that I will play. They are King George and Thomas Jefferson. They are my favorite characters. I'm sorry, I wanted to go before anybody else said who I wanted or liked. I didn't want anybody else to say it before me. But I love King George's character. He just came out there, he did his part, left, and they were comedic whole way through. Thomas Jefferson, why do we love him? Oh my gosh, if he ain't one more pompous, you know what? And then the sarcasm is just out of this world. And I mean, that actor did that. I loved him every scene he was in. From his entrance, he was just like, yes, throw those flowers out for me. It's me, I've arrived. Loved it. He was my favorite. And yes, if I could play him, I would. Next.
Okay, so I'm going to go next just because Kiana stole my answer.
No, she stole mine. She stole mine, and I'm gonna tell you why after you go. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have two as well, Liz. I have two as well. But funny enough, they're both played by the same actor.
Person.
So I loved
John
the whole Lafayette character.
And he rapped in French. He rapped in French.
He rapped in French. He was amazing. It was great. But the Thomas Jefferson, you all actually might agree because I know all of you outside of work. But like Kiana was speaking to, like that pompous, very sarcastic attitude, that kind of, y'all can do that, but y'all ain't got no money type of attitude. Like the attitude that he had, it was like, that's me right there. Like, because a lot of people oftentimes, I'm an introverted person, you know, that's always associated with, being uppity, being pompous, being, you know, me playing that role would just be, I don't know how to put it. Me playing that role
living your best
like
life.
Yes.
Self-actualization.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, self-actualization, manifestation.
Like a personification of what's inside. That's the inside it's coming out.
Like, yeah, and it's almost like a slap in the face where it's like, okay, you perceive me to be this way, so let me really be this way. So I would love to act in that role. It was great. I was entertained the entire time he came on set.
Yes.
Yeah. Kudos to the actor who played the role. Both.
Yes. He's awesome. He's awesome. Kiana took mine, and mine is just real simple and real quick. It would be King George. King George was the comedic relief that we needed. And to me, I think it played on the American stereotype about Britain. Like everything he did was like Elton John. It was like, I saw Elton John, and that's no slur to Sir Elton.
His songs are based off of Elton John and the Beatles.
Right.
Like that was what his inspiration was.
And so, I loved it.
Straight up.
I loved it.
It was perfect.
I loved it.
Come on, Sagittarius.
Yeah. But King George was everything. I just think the air, and I think he was able to convey. He didn't have that much movement, but he made, just from an actor note to actor note, when he moved, it had meaning and it added to his character. Like he stood in one spot. If he gave you a shimmy, it was either to be the gag or the punchline, if you will. And I just see myself as a like comedic person. I'm one of those people, if you come on down to the library, we interact, you're calling about books by mail, we're going to have a good time. So I just find him a relatable person. I just try to infuse a little bit of myself in the situation. So I like King George.
It's funny because I definitely like King George, but that's not the character I would play. There's two characters I would play, and it's funny because ultimately it's like they start out as best friends, but then they go father and son. So it's Hamilton and of course John Lorenz, aka Philip. And the reason why Hamilton, he reminds me a lot of myself. He's a relentless man. He has a strong work ethic. He gonna get to the top even if he don't really get exactly just that president name. He was everything that he could have ever dreamed of. I mean, he was right hand to George Washington for real, you know, like he was basically a commander under a commander, if you will.
Right.
You know, he led the Battle of Yorktown. Like his name was in high places sometimes before his feet even stepped into the room.
Right.
And it reminds me of myself. He tells you over and over again, I came from the bottom, but I did what I got to do. And I know Aaron Burr told him like all the time, like talk less and smile more, but he was a revolutionary and he had something to say. And he was going to say it by any means necessary. And I love how Aaron, at the end, he realized the world was wide enough for both him and Hamilton. It didn't have to be jealousy. They could have both made it together because that's what Hamilton wanted. And when I think of myself, I want all my friends to eat at the top. I don't want nobody to feel some type of way because I went first or something. You know, so that's one. But then, of course, John Lorenz, obviously, he was dedicated. He's a genuine soul. Even to when he became Philip, he basically lost his life because of his dad. He went to go fight for his father in essence. And it just reminds me of the genuine spirit I have. Like, if I'm down for you, I'm down, I'm a ride. And I really enjoyed both, Hamilton and Philip or John Loren, their demeanors. Like, they was confident. They had a little cocky swag though. And it was, he stood up and said ALEX, I'm saying? He could have spelled his name. I'm like KANE, I'm over here trying to spell. I'm with all of it. So definitely I would play them two people.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that character is always an interesting one because that's the one who says they die for Hamilton, and then they both end up dying for Hamilton in both characters. I want to shout out the actor who played Madison and Mulligan as well, because there are a lot of people who early on did not realize that he was playing two characters because he was so good. Like, and when because I first listened to Hamilton before I saw this show, so I did not even realize that was two different characters until like I was starting to see clips, and I'm like, wait, that's the same person. But I just want to give him a shout out because I really feel like he kind of gets like this like missed, like people miss him, but he really, I just feel like he did so good. Like, it's like it was so seamless. Like, it almost seemed like it was someone else.
Elizabeth, you saw it live, and we'll start with you. How do you think, anything you want to share about seeing it live versus seeing it via streaming service?
I would recommend, if you have the ability to see it live, see it live. But I think that seeing it via a streaming service is extremely beneficial as well, because you get to see things that you're just not going to see live. Like, there's just little intricacies, little movements people make. You just can't, there's no way you can see the whole thing. And a streaming can kind of even add to a narrative because it's edited and cut a certain way. So I think that is beneficial. And I think I hope to see that it's done more, because that's something I used to watch a lot when I was a kid. PBS used to actually always stream Broadway shows. And I used to love to watch that because there is something to seeing a live performance. Like, this is not a movie, it's a live performance. They ran through that. And you heard those people, I mean, they were singing that there. So I think there's something to seeing a streamed live performance. And you can kind of look at other examples of them trying to do that with like The Wiz and like certain things now, but I think there's something to seeing someone possibly mess up. And the thing is, I will say one thing that seeing it live does add is that you see how people adjust to live. Like, there's adjustments made like in seconds, because like a gun might not go off when it's supposed to go off, and like, what are they gonna, like it adds an element to the story. And that person's performance might be meaningful to them in that moment because of something happening. So yeah, so it's both, but I really want to see more streamed live performances, like less, like more things like Hamilton, the musical on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think I would have been stuck after the first number and would be discombobulated and passed out, because it was just so high hitting each musical thing, and it was just so unexpected to me. I heard people rave about Hamilton, and I'm like, okay, Hamilton, but like, I mean, when I see it for myself, it was hard hitting each. And I think hip hop, the ability to get that drum beat into your soul and your body, and you hitting that, and you have R&B, and what am I going to see next? And oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I like the ability to watch with captions because it was so lyrical heavy. I like the ability to pause. I like the ability to have an intermission, and it's even cute how they give you a 60-second in the streaming. So yeah. I think sometimes you need to digest. I want to direct this next question to Kanisha, as our resident hip hop artist at Prince George's County Memorial Library System. Please share your thoughts about hip hop in it, like hip hop almost being another character in it. What really struck you about it as a hip hop artist? What really struck you about it, just loving the craft of hip hop like you do? what really did that for you? So give your expertise, if you will.
Well, for starters, I would say again how every time a performer gets up to sing their song, it's like Lynn is rewriting another song and the aspect of it. And he does it so many times. Like, any song that you listen to, if you really know the album, you just hear that he obviously put one song that probably was in track 4 could possibly be in track 8. And it's subtle, but it creeps up on you. That's one. Number 2, Lynn's ability to write the lyrics and make them flow as rappers of today. Like, it is not a boring musical. It's something that gets me moving. It gets my child moving, and she's only 2, but it makes her nod her head and get her moving and dancing. It's the flow. The flow for me is always how you're going to get me to stay and attentive to your beat. I think one of the best things that Lynn ever did was this show on Netflix. I don't know what it's called, but he talked about the song Wait For It and how he wrote it for Aaron Burr. And he said he was on a party, like going on, he was on a train going to a party, and he started writing it at home. And then he finally got to the party, and in a matter of him even eating a bag of chips, he had to leave the party and get back on the train to finish writing the song because something had like made his brain go. And I think it's interesting that I didn't really get to speak about the tragedy of Burr, but I feel like those songs that Burr sung, like Wait For It and Dear Theodosia and the song for, Hamilton's son versus his daughter, they were all juxtaposition. They were juxtaposing the two characters side by side, letting you know that Aaron, whatever you're waiting for, you're going to be waiting a long time, my brother, because Hamilton felt he had to go and he had to move. And I feel like with every song, that's what Lynn does for you. He tells you to go get whatever is yours. Even with the king, he's trying to get the people to stay and not leave him. Go get the people. Even with Eliza, she want to go, she want to leave, but her narrative end up being to stay. Like, it's so many ways that he's telling people to go after what you want. He's motivational in every song he writes, and it strikes you. And I think for me, my favorite part is every time I hear Hamilton music, I'm treating it like it's the first time I'm hearing the other album. It's before our time. I want someone else to make another craft like that, but it's gonna be hard to find. So Lynn, if you out there and you hear me, let's go. Let's get in the studio tonight. I'm trying to work with you, bro. You did your thing, man. I'm with it.
And that's what art does. Art begets art, creative, to inspire it. They always say, there's nothing new, when people talk about, infringement, but art begets art. Now, you brought up a good point, and anyone, can kind of answer this. They talk about so many samples being used, because if you a hip hop aficionado, who he was trying to put, that was an Eminem like battle, or that was this, and there's so many songs, like even the R&B songs on there, you can compare them to the top leaders today. Now, he has never really said everything. They call them eggs. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of eggs left in there. Like, I'll give you an example. When the one he had the affair with, I can't think of her name, but saying
Mariah
no.
Reynolds.
Yeah.
Say no to this.
Say no to this. I'm a Jill Scott fan. And I was like, I heard this. I was like, I know that's Jill Scott. Like, did he just use Jill? Did he sample Jill? Did Jill get a check? Like, I was like really concerned.
To the mixtape, because there's a Hamilton mixtape, yes. And Jill Scott sings like a version of the song, which I actually like that better. But
yeah, of course, because that's my girl Jill. But like, he drops these eggs for people, and he said he won't give them all away. He said he won't give them, like, he wants you to kind of like hear it and be a part of this. Was there any sample, and I'll start with you, Kanisha, that you were surprised that he used and you thought that was so eloquently done? And anybody else can chime in after Kanisha.
I mean, I think you made a good point about the 10 crack commandments, the 10 do, and that's one of my favorite, obviously one of my favorites, because just the way he orchestrated it. Of course, I love the battle in general, because it does remind me of 8 Mile, with Eminem, or even today, just the ciphers that are popular. You got Cassidy, who's a battle artist, and Arsenal. So, you have that. So I like that. For me personally, Carrie-Ann, I think sometimes like I wasn't even trying to focus on who he was taken from. I was more so just wrapped up in the idea like, bro, you did that. Like, I don't need, at this point, whoever inspired you, bro, keep going back to them. Because if they can get you to do this, what else can you possibly do? I'm just trying to understand. Because whatever he did, bro, I want to do it too. I want to repeat it. I want to emulate it. I tell my friend all the time, I want to make a musical like Hamilton. And if y'all got some writers up y'all sleeve, please send them my way. Y'all want to work on a musical with me, I'm with it. Yeah, but those some eggs I like carrying.
Anybody else on music samples, anything like that? Yeah, our
There's
resident.
just so many.
Yeah,
There's
and our
so
resident
many.
artists.
It is so many.
Yeah,
There's a lot.
It is.
I rated 5 as being the highest. Ain't nothing that I wouldn't have said. Like, I'll say this. If I saw it live, I would be mad because I would want to see it again and again. Thank you, streaming services, for making the ability for me to see it with captions, and for it to be affordable for me. And that's my thing, because it's so lyrical heavy. I felt like I would have missed so much seeing it live. That's all.
Mm-hmm. I would also, of course, give it a 5. I don't think there's anything I would change. I wish I had seen it live. We had plans to see it live, and those plans fell through, thanks Corona. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I always make fun of Kanisha because she will always sing the songs, and I'd be like, what is she? Like, it's not that serious. But after I watched it, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to be watching this again. And just a side comment, after the very first song, I wanted to freaking cry. I was into it that much. I was like, oh my God, it's about to go down.
Yeah, but 5 out of 5.
So Daniel, thoughts?
Yeah.
Ratings. Where you at?
I'm gonna give it a 5. I'm gonna go with the majority. It's a 5. There is nothing I would have changed. Nothing.
Well, we thank everyone for staying with us and tuning in. If you a movie person, a musical person, we have all these free resources at our library. If you are into movies, if you're into music and you want to keep it, did you know you can download some free songs using Friggle? If you're interested, go to our website, www.pgcmls.info, and I'll run it across the screen, but definitely check it out. It's free. Also, we have Canopy, which has several different movies, like so many. I think it's over 26,000. Definitely check them out. So, and also Hoopla. So please go to our website and use our online resources. If you want to see any past videos, please check out our YouTube page. We have tons of archive videos for you to check out. Thank you again and have a great day.